Stop drinking your coffee like this, because what happens in your body in the next 10 minutes could be completely different, and almost nobody is talking about it. Most people think coffee is just about caffeine, a quick boost, a temporary fix to feel awake. But here's the part that should make you pause. One tiny ingredient, something you've probably ignored your entire life, can quietly change how your body reacts to that coffee almost immediately, and not in a small way. Now, this might sound exaggerated at first. It sounds like one of those random internet tricks that doesn't really do anything. But what's interesting is this isn't new. People have been doing this for years without making a big deal about it. The difference is, now we're starting to understand what's actually happening inside the body when you combine these two things. Because here's the truth, most people don't realize. Your morning coffee is already doing more than you think. It's not just waking you up. It's interacting with your digestion, your blood flow, your brain, even your hormones. But what happens next is where it gets interesting. When you add just one clove into your coffee, something subtle begins to shift within minutes. You won't notice it right away. There's no dramatic feeling in the first sip. In fact, it feels almost the same. But inside your body, the chemistry starts changing almost instantly. Clove contains a powerful natural compound that most people have never heard of, yet it's one of the most active plant compounds you can consume in such a small amount. And when this compound mixes with what's already inside coffee, it creates a kind of reaction that isn't obvious. But it is noticeable if you pay attention. But here's the strange part. The first thing that changes isn't your energy. It's not the caffeine hit. It's something much quieter. Within the first few minutes, your digestive system begins responding differently. Most people are used to coffee feeling a bit heavy, sometimes even irritating on an empty stomach. But when clove is added, that experience can shift. The stomach reacts in a more balanced way, almost like the sharpness of coffee gets softened without losing its effect. And this is where most people miss what's really happening. Because while you're focused on the taste, your body's already adjusting how it processes what you just drank. Enzymes start interacting differently. The breakdown of compounds begins to slow in some areas and speed up in others. It's a small shift, but it sets off a chain reaction. Now you might be wondering, is this actually noticeable? For some people, the answer is yes, but not in the way you'd expect. It's not a sudden burst. It's not overwhelming. It's more like a smoother transition into alertness. And that's where the next effect begins. Because what happens next is where things start to separate from normal coffee. Instead of that quick spike of energy followed by a drop, something else begins to happen. The release of energy feels more controlled, less shaky, less jittery. And here's the part most people don't connect. It's not just the caffeine doing the work anymore. The compounds in clove begin interacting with how your body absorbs and responds to what's in your coffee. And this changes the entire experience without you even realizing it. But don't assume that's the biggest benefit, because it's not. There's another effect that starts quietly, and most people only notice it if they pay close attention later in the day. And once you understand this part, it completely changes how you look at your morning routine. Before we get into that, there's something important to understand. Most people are actually ruining their coffee without knowing it, not because they're doing something extreme, but because of small habits that cancel out a lot of the benefits before they even begin. Adding too much sugar changes how your body reacts almost immediately. Heavy cream or milk can interfere with how certain compounds are absorbed, and overly processed coffee loses a lot of what makes it powerful in the first place. So even before adding anything new, most people are already starting at a disadvantage. Now imagine correcting that, and then adding something that amplifies what coffee already does. That's where this gets interesting, because once the initial digestion response settles, the next phase begins. And this is where people start noticing something different. It doesn't feel like a rush. It feels like clarity, and that clarity doesn't come all at once. It builds. But here's the part that most people have no idea is happening. And once you understand this, it changes everything about how you see that one small clove sitting in your kitchen. Because what's happening inside your body doesn't stop at digestion or that smoother feeling of energy. That's just the surface. The real shift starts a little deeper. And this is where most people completely miss what's actually going on. It starts with something that quietly controls how you feel throughout the entire day, your blood sugar. Now, most people don't wake up thinking about blood sugar. They just drink their coffee and move on. But here's the strange part. Within the first hour after that coffee, your body is already reacting in ways that can either help you or slowly work against you. And this is where things begin to change. Because when you add that one clove, something subtle starts happening in how your body handles what you just drank. It doesn't feel dramatic. There's no instant signal. But internally, the way your system processes that coffee begins to shift. Instead of creating a quick spike followed by a drop, the response becomes more controlled, slower, more stable. And this is where people start to notice something unusual. They don't get that sudden crash. They don't feel that strong urge to snack right after. They don't feel that restless, slightly uncomfortable dip in energy that usually shows up mid-morning. But here's the part most people don't connect. They think it's just a good day. They don't realize it started with that one small change in their coffee. What happens next is where it gets even more interesting. Because this isn't just about avoiding a crash. It's about how your body manages energy over time. When your system isn't constantly jumping up and down, your body doesn't go into that reactive mode where it starts craving quick fixes. Sugar, snacks, another cup of coffee, it all starts to level out. And that changes everything. Because now, instead of chasing energy, your body starts maintaining it. But here's the strange part. Most people won't notice this immediately. They notice it later, around mid-morning, or even early afternoon. They suddenly realize they're still focused, still steady, still functioning without that heavy drop they're used to. And this is where things begin to stack, because once your energy stabilizes, another system starts responding. Your metabolism. Now, this is where people get it wrong. They think metabolism is something fixed, something they can't really influence in small ways. But in reality, it's constantly reacting to what you do, especially in the morning. And your morning coffee plays a bigger role than most people realize. Because what happens next is where things start to shift again. When you combine coffee with clove, your body begins handling certain compounds differently. The way it processes energy, the way it reacts to intake, even the way it distributes that energy across your system, it starts to feel more balanced. Not faster in a chaotic way, not slower in a sluggish way, just more efficient. And here's where it gets interesting. Some people begin to notice that they don't feel as heavy after eating later in the day. Others feel like their body isn't holding on to that same level of sluggishness. It's subtle, but it builds. And this is where most people start asking questions. Because it doesn't feel like a sudden change. It feels like something gradually improving. But don't assume that's the full picture. Because there's another layer to this, and it's something almost nobody talks about. Inflammation. Now, inflammation is one of those things that people only notice when it becomes a problem. Stiff joints, that slow, uncomfortable feeling when you wake up, that sense that your body takes longer to start in the morning. But here's the strange part. A lot of that starts quietly, and what you do early in the day can influence how your body handles it. Because what happens next is where this gets deeper. The compounds in clove begin interacting with your body in a way that supports how it handles internal stress. Not in a dramatic overnight way, but in a steady, consistent way. And when this combines with what coffee already does, something starts to change. Over time, your body feels less tense, less tight, less reactive. But here's the part that surprises people. They don't notice it all at once. They notice it in small moments. Getting out of bed feels slightly easier. Moving around feels a little smoother. That background discomfort that used to be there feels quieter. And they don't always connect it back to what they changed, but it all started earlier, with that one decision. Now this is where things begin to escalate, because once your body starts stabilizing energy and managing internal stress better, another effect begins to show up, and this one is harder to ignore, because it affects how you think. And what happens next is where everything starts to connect together in a way most people never expect, because once those physical shifts begin stacking in the background, something else starts to change, and this is the part people actually feel the most, even if they don't fully understand why. It's your mind. Now, most people think they already know how coffee affects their brain. It wakes you up fast, it sharpens your focus for a short time, but it also comes with a trade-off, that slightly wired feeling, that restless edge sitting underneath your thoughts, the kind of focus that feels strong, but not always stable. And here's the strange part. A lot of people have accepted that as normal. They think that's just how coffee works. But what happens next is where things start to feel different. When clove enters the mix, the way your brain responds to coffee can begin to shift. Not in a dramatic, overwhelming way. It doesn't hit you all at once. Instead, it changes the texture of your focus. It feels smoother, more controlled, more steady. And this is where people start noticing something they weren't expecting. Instead of feeling alert and scattered at the same time, their thoughts begin to feel more organized. They can focus on one thing without that constant pull to switch tasks. The noise in the background starts to quiet down. And here's the part that catches people off guard. It doesn't feel like more energy. It feels like better energy. Now, this isn't something that shows up instantly for everyone. For some people, it takes a few tries before they really notice the difference. But once they do, it becomes hard to ignore because what happens next builds on top of everything else that's already been happening in your body. Your digestion feels more balanced, your energy feels more stable, your body feels less tense, and now your mind begins to match that state. And this is where everything starts connecting. Because when your body isn't constantly reacting, your brain doesn't have to either. There's less internal stress, less fluctuation, less of that constant up and down cycle that most people don't even realize they're stuck in. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Some people begin to notice that their focus doesn't just feel better in the morning. It carries into the rest of the day. They don't hit that same wall as early. They don't feel the need to constantly reset with more caffeine or sugar. And this is where the real shift begins. Because now, instead of chasing energy throughout the day, your body is maintaining it. And that changes how you move, how you think, and how you feel overall. But here's the part most people still miss. They assume this is coming from something complicated, a supplement, a strict routine, a major lifestyle change. But it started with something small, something simple, something most people overlook every single day. And that's what makes it powerful, because it doesn't require you to completely change your life. It just changes how your body responds to something you're already doing. Now, here's where things need to be clear. This isn't a miracle trick. It's not going to instantly fix everything overnight, and it's not meant to replace everything else that matters for your health. But it's one of those small adjustments that can create a noticeable shift when it's done consistently. And that's what most people underestimate. They're always looking for something big, something dramatic, something that feels like a complete transformation. But in reality, the most powerful changes often start with something this simple. And here's the part that really matters. Most people won't try it, not because it's hard, not because it's expensive, but because it seems too simple to matter. And that's exactly why it works. Because the things that are simple are often the ones that get ignored the most. So the next time you make your coffee, don't just go through the motion automatically like you always do. Pause for a moment. Think about what you're putting into your body. Think about how it's affecting you, not just in that first sip, but in the next 10 minutes, the next hour, the rest of your day. And then try one small change. Add one clove, let it sit, drink it slowly, and actually pay attention. Because once you start noticing how your body responds, you won't be able to unsee it. You'll start recognizing the difference between rushed energy and steady energy, between feeling alert and feeling clear, between reacting and actually being in control. And that awareness alone changes everything. Because when you understand how small inputs affect your body, you stop treating your routine like something automatic and start treating it like something intentional. So try it once, not because someone told you it works, but because you're curious enough to see what happens for yourself. And if you do notice a difference, even a small one, then you already know what to do next. Keep it simple, keep it consistent, and let your body show you what it's been trying to tell you all along.